The case against Israel for genocide is absurd, just as Secretary Blinken said. But the problem is South Africa is not bringing this case to win it. They're just bringing the case to interfere with Israel's ability to defend itself using legal technicalities. It's cynical, and it harms the cause of preventing genocide throughout the world. They don't have to prove that Israel committed genocide. They just have to prove that there is a possibility that there is a legitimate case to be made. That's all they have to prove, and the standard of evidence to prove that is very low. And based on that, they can get a temporary emergency order for an immediate ceasefire. That leaves Hamas in control. It leaves the hostages in captivity, possibly for years, with Israel unable to return fire. It's critical to take a good offense, and that means counterclaims. You don't just go in there and defend yourself, which Israel absolutely can do, because Israel has been extraordinarily cautious about civilian casualties, and that's the truth.
Yes.
But Israel can also bring counterclaims against the other parties, which include parties that have openly stated that they intend to carry out acts of genocide.
Israel has to make it very clear that we do not intend to subordinate ourselves to any decision by the International Court. Defiance would provide more posture of deterrence.
Now, if Israel were to disregard the ruling, aside from the PR problem, there would likely be a resolution tabled at the Security Council, and it may get vetoed and it may not. The United States normally would veto something like that, but if we're talking about violating an actual court order, it might not get vetoed. And if it doesn't get vetoed, the economic sanctions would be utterly destructive. It would cut off Israel entirely from the whole world. And even beyond that, individual nations like Norway, for example, have already brought criminal cases against Israeli officials. We would likely see arrest warrants from multiple countries around the world that would be enforced by Interpol. Israeli officials, even former Israeli soldiers leaving the country, would be subject to arrest, conviction, and prison time.
Ambassador Ettinger, can you appease this Armageddon-ish, I can't believe I'm using this term for the second time on this broadcast, scenario here?
The last thing that Israel should contemplate is to sacrifice its national security on the altar of any international organization, let alone this international court.
Absolutely agree with Ambassador Ettinger that Israel should not sacrifice its security issues on the basis of some international body. However, Israel does have to understand we're fighting a war on two fronts, and one of those fronts is communication and law, and if we neglect those fronts, we will pay a price for it just as much as if we were to neglect a military front.